Hi, welcome back to the continuation of chapter 2. In the first piece, we looked at the early management theorists, and now we're jumping to the late 1900s. So just a couple of slides in this quick video, looking at the thinkers that started around 1990s with a different shift from sort of the sole focus on efficiency and productivity into a more humane perspective of how we can manage our organizations, starting to look at things such as culture and leadership and the impact that that have on organizations and organizations' employees. So we have a slide here of some of the more prominent or more popular maybe thinkers of these ideas, and so we'll cover a couple of them here, and feel free to pursue some of your own studies of these gentlemen, these white gentlemen as well. So Peter Drucker, extremely prolific management thinker and writer, maybe the man in terms of publications, not saying that all of his advice and all of his thinking is on point. That's for you to judge what works for you and what works for your organization. But definitely prolific, and so could potentially be called rock star. He did a lot of diving into the management of professionals as opposed to laborers, which obviously dominated the earlier thinking when we did a lot more production. And now we are in a more office white collar environment. So here we are looking at professionals, we are looking at white collar workers, knowledge workers, the people that work using their cognitive abilities, their brains, right, instead of their hands and their physical bodies. He ventured into entrepreneurship. He did a lot on decision making. A number of books came out of Peter Drucker. In 1982 was a book by Peters and Waterman that really sort of shifted the way we were thinking about companies and organizations. And that one was called In Search of Excellence. So we can say these are the updated principles of management compared to the ones that we saw earlier by Henri Fayol and others. So we have two slides here listing the ones that came out of that book. So the first one is managing ambiguity and paradox. So that's principle number 1. So in our complex organizations now, where things are moving fast and a lot of things are going on, we have different strategic priorities, we have different initiatives, we have different focuses in organizations. Big organizations have a lot of different divisions, and so we have to manage maybe different roles and projects. So managing ambiguity and paradox is natural. We have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and we have to get comfortable and we have to get good at thinking about more than one thing at a time. So this is really the ability to hold two opposing ideas in one's mind at the same time and still being able to function effectively. We have a principle number 2, and that one is a bias for action. So sometimes what we see is that, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I just meant to bring up my pen. A bias for action is that we are very good at thinking, we're good at meeting, we're good at discussing in organizations, and sometimes we have a hard time jumping into action. So a bias for action means we should be doing things to get things moving, because once you are in movement, now we're getting feedback from the environment, from other people, from customers, from anything or anybody that can give you feedback. Even if you're not soliciting feedback, you're getting feedback from their reactions and their behaviors. And now we can start revising, right? So action is preferred sometimes if we're sitting too long on that thinking. I remember this story that I read in a book 100 years ago, and I don't even remember. It was one of the big automakers in Detroit, and they were talking about the fact that what would happen, right? They were talking about how the organization was so good at discussing and meeting and not doing. And they said, you know, if we found a snake on the factory floor in the middle of production, what would happen? What would the organization do? Well, they probably would talk about it. Then they would think about how they should solve the problem. Having a snake on the factory floor, They would probably come to the conclusion that they need to bring in some consultants. They would go out and interview consultants. They would bring the consultants into the organizations. The consultants would see the snake on the factory floor. They would write a report on it, etc. Right? So bias for actions means that we should be solving things quicker. Number 3, staying close to the customer, right? In big organizations today, supporting functions like HR have their customers internally, being the managers. Clearly, for an organization that sells products and services, we also have the external customer that is purchasing these products and services. And so we need to know who they are, especially useful in 2021, where we see a lot of individualization. People want to have customized products and services. They want to co-create together with their organization. So this is super key still here today, right? Autonomy and entrepreneurship, talked about that a little bit with the earlier principles that we saw, but we want to, most of us, right? We want to be in control. We want to have the opportunity to be creative and innovative and not be micromanaged. And when we have that opportunity for innovation and for thinking, we are happier and we come up with better, solutions. Productivity through people. Everyone within the organization is useful. Everyone within the organization have a point of view that we can draw upon. They have a competence, and we should value everyone. Right? So looking for quality, looking for improvements, all of us. Principle number 6, being hands-on and value-driven. This is a management philosophy that guides everyday practice and shows management's commitment, right? Again, much trickier in big organizations where you have multiple levels, if I can speak today, multiple levels of management. So the higher up you get in the organization, the further from the action you are. So how can you be hands-on more in these organizations? You have to walk the gamba, you have to find ways to be close to production, because that's how you know how to be better, where to capture value. Stick to the knitting, do what you do best. This is probably the number one priority when we talk about strategy for organizations. This applies to you as a human being, right? We can't be amazing at everything. We can be amazing at one thing or maybe a couple things. So stay with what you do well and the businesses you know best. That's the principle here. And you will be more successful, right? And we see companies that go out and do a lot of acquisitions in industries that are not their main industry or where they have core competencies. It's very, very hard to capture value when we pick up pieces in our organization that is not our knowledge base and not what we do well. Simple form lean staff. You see, I talk with my hands a lot. I really miss being in the classroom. Walking around is key for me. So being lean in the organization, this is, clearly not a new idea. We still struggle with it. Again, a lot of management layers, a lot of processes, getting as lean as we can and making sure that we have the competency that we need, but not a lot of additional. This is tricky because people in decision-making positions in the organizations, very rarely do they want to eliminate themselves. So even if they are in a sort of non-value role in the organization, unlikely that they're going to fire themselves, right? So this is an ideal, and we don't see most organizations do this. Then we have the loose-tight properties, simultaneous loose-tight properties. This is sort of the global local, again, in larger organizations. So, not as applicable to the 100-person startup, but large organizations where you have a headquarter, you have districts, you have, offices, you have branches, whatever it is. You want to have some centralization from the headquarters throughout the organization, whether they are here or in Asia or in South America, Europe, right? But we want to also make sure that they have autonomy where they sit, right? So if you're headquartered on the East Coast of the United States, you have offices in California, clearly we need to have some common, policies and processes, we need to standardize and be consistent. But then again, California is very different from New York. So how can we make sure that we also give each individual local outfit the autonomy that they need? All right, that's going to wrap it. I'll see you back for the next one. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy.